welcome to this explainer. Today we are taking a journey into literally the absolute extremes of human morality. We're going to explore an ancient Indian epic that pushes the whole concept of truth, or Satya, to its absolute breaking point. It's one of those rare stories that has echoed through millennia, profoundly shaping philosophy, culture, and, as you'll see, real-world history. But before we dive into the deep philosophical weeds here, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of someone facing just the ultimate moral dilemma. Ask yourself, what is the absolute highest price you would pay to never tell a lie? Would you give up your wealth, your home, your family? What about your own life? Keep that question right in the back of your mind as we go, because the figure we're exploring today answered yes to literally every single one of those. So, to understand why anyone would go to such extremes, we kind of have to look at the roots of this idea in ancient India. The Sanskrit word sat translates to absolute reality, fact, or that which is unchangeable. Basically, it implies that which is good, enduring, and essential to the universe. So, satya, truth, isn't just about, not telling a fib. It means deeply, profoundly aligning your thoughts, your speech, and your actions with absolute reality. And this isn't just a niche idea either. Across Indian religions, Satya is a foundational pillar. In Hinduism, it's essential to the cosmic order. The belief is that without it, reality itself would just fall apart. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it's a primary moral restraint to keep you from distorting reality. It's a main vow in Jainism, central to the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism, and one of the five core virtues in Sikhism. This immense cosmic weight of truth sets the stage perfectly for our protagonist. Okay, enter King Harishchandra of the mighty Ikshwaku dynasty. According to the ancient texts, this guy was the perfect embodiment of Satya. He was famous for two very specific, very rare qualities. He had never uttered a single lie in his entire life, and he would never, ever go back on a promise. He was an ideal ruler, a devoted husband, a loving father. In fact, his reputation was so spotless that it reached the ears of, well, you guessed it, the gods themselves. All right, let's set the scene for this celestial conflict. Up in the court of the gods, this massive debate breaks out. Sage Vasishtha proudly claims that Harishchandra is a truly pure man who will never deviate from the path of truth. But Sage Vishwamitra, who, by the way, is pretty famous in the text for his vengeful nature, completely doubts the king's integrity. So Vishwamitra essentially makes a cosmic bet. Think about the sheer audacity of this for a second. God's playing with a mortal's life just to win an argument. He vows to aggressively test the king, stripping away all his wealth and power, purely to prove that under enough pressure, Harishchandra would lie just to survive. So how exactly does a sage attack a king, right? Well, Vishwamitra absolutely does not hold back. First, he tricks the king into promising him unlimited gifts after a royal sacrifice. When Harishchandra pays up, Vishwamitra unleashes these magical wild beasts to ravage the kingdom's crops. Then, when the king tries to stop the beasts, Vishwamitra confronts him, creates illusions to anger him, and ultimately demands that Harishchandra surrender his entire kingdom and all his administrative power to the sage. And incredibly, just to keep his word, the king calmly agrees. The descent into poverty here is shockingly fast. Day one, he's stripped of his kingdom, and Harishchandra has to leave with his wife, Queen Shabya, and their young son. But Vishwamitra stops them on the way out. He claims there's still an unpaid fee, a dakshina, for a previous ritual, and slaps them with a strict 48-day deadline to pay it. Having absolutely nothing left, the family travels to the city of Varanasi. With the deadline looming, Harishchandra is forced to do the unthinkable. He sells his own wife and son into servitude to a Brahmin. And to pay the remaining balance, the king sells himself to a Chandala, an outcast. Now, if you know your epics, you might actually be thinking of Prince Yudhishthira from the Mahabharata right now. He also lost his kingdom and famously wagered his wife. But the texts point out a really crucial difference in their dharma, or righteous duty. You see, Yudhishthira was a victim of his own vice, a weakness for gambling. He wagered his family without permission. Harishchandra, however, was a pure victim of artificial tests. And heartbreakingly, it was actually his wife's own suggestion to sell her, so that her husband wouldn't be forced to break his sacred vow of truth. And this brings Harishchandra to absolute rock bottom. The once mighty king of the Solar Dynasty is sent to work at the cremation grounds. He's reduced to an unrecognizable ash-smeared servant gathering fees from the dead. He wears tattered rags, sleeps among the funeral pyres, and works for a master named Veerabahu. A whole year passes in this gritty, genuinely horrific new reality. And we absolutely cannot overlook the agonizing emotional weight of how he even got there. Remember the words from his wife, Queen Shayabya, who is also known as Taramati. When they literally had no money left, she looked at him and said, "Protect your Dharma. Protect your pledge. You have never deviated from the truth." Her pure, unwavering devotion to his righteousness is what forced him to sell her and their son into what turned out to be terribly abusive slavery under that Brahmin.
But wait, the true breaking point of Vishwamitra's test, it was still to come. While they're serving this cruel Brahmin, Harishchandra's young son, Prince Rohitashwa, is sent into the forest to gather wood. Out there, he is bitten by a poisonous snake and dies instantly. His destitute mother is left completely alone, forced to carry the lifeless body of her only child to the cremation ground in the dead of night.
Which brings us to a frankly terrifying moral dilemma. It bridges this high-level, abstract concept of absolute truth with just agonizing human reality. Ask yourself this. If you were bound by a strict oath to your master to collect a toll for every single cremation, would you enforce it? Even if the person standing in front of you was your own grieving, destitute wife. Even if the body was your own dead child. Because, unbelievably, that is exactly what happens. In the pitch black of the crematorium, Harishchandra is so strictly bound by his duty to his master that he doesn't even recognize his wife or his son at first. When he finally realizes who they are, the grief is unbearable. Yet even then, he refuses to let the grieving mother burn the body without paying the official fee. When she says she has absolutely nothing, he suggests she pawn her Mangalsutra, the sacred symbol of their marriage, just to pay the toll. He prioritizes absolute truth and duty over his own immense compassion and grief. Vishwamitra sees that he still hasn't broken the king, so he engineers the ultimate inescapable trap. That same night, bandits murder the local prince of Varanasi. The grieving queen, who is crying out in the dark, is mistakenly arrested for the crime. She's falsely accused, dragged before the local ruler, and sentenced to death. And who do you think is ordered to act as the public hangman? Yep, Harishchandra. Harishchandra leads her to the gallows, completely unaware at first of who she is. He asks her to say her final prayers. Squatting on the ground, the queen prays out loud. But she doesn't curse her horrible fate. No. She prays for her husband's name to last forever in glory. She prays for her son. And incredibly, she prays for sage Vishwamitra to become immortal. Hearing this absolute purity, Harishchandra is suddenly shocked into recognizing his beloved wife right before he's supposed to execute her. And Vishwamitra actually appears right in that exact moment. He offers Harishchandra one final out. Abandon your vow right now, give in to the temptation, and I will instantly restore your wealth and your son. Harishchandra suddenly realizes the entire agonizing ordeal was orchestrated by the sage. Yet, with unwavering determination, he refuses to break his vow. Bound by the orders of his master to execute the prisoner, he raises his sword, preparing to behead his own wife to uphold the truth. But the sword never falls. In the ultimate triumph of truth, divine intervention literally stops the blade in midair. Lords Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma appear. Young Rohitashwa is brought back to life. Vishwamitra bows down, admitting total defeat. The nightmare is finally over. The gods reveal that this extreme suffering was actually a divine illusion, orchestrated to prove Harishchandra's absolute righteousness. That cruel Brahmin? He was actually Agni, the god of fire. And the Chandala master was Yama, the god of Dharma himself. As a reward for all this cosmic merit, the gods offer Harishchandra and his family a golden ticket, immediate passage to heaven. But you'd think he'd just take the win, right? Nope. Harishchandra's devotion to duty remains completely unbroken, even in victory. He refuses to go. He tells the gods that he cannot abandon his loyal, grieving subjects down in his kingdom. He insists that he will only go to heaven if his people can join him, offering to share his hard-earned blessings with everyone. This ancient crucible of truth, it didn't just stay confined to mythological texts. It rippled through time with a massive real-world legacy. Watching a play about Harishchandra as a child deeply, deeply inspired Mahatma Gandhi, basically cementing his lifelong political and spiritual dedication to truth. The king's story was even the subject of India's very first full-length feature film way back in 1913. And to this day, one of the primary cremation grounds in modern Varanasi is named the Harishchandra Ghat, honoring his legendary time there. We're going to wrap up this explainer with a famous quote from the Mundaka Upanishad, Satya Mema Jayate, truth alone triumphs.
This incredibly powerful philosophical principle, demonstrated so brutally and beautifully by King Harishchandra, is now the official national motto of India. It leaves us all to ponder. In our modern world, which is so often filled with compromises and gray areas, what is the enduring power of absolute, uncompromising truth? And if you were tested today, would your truth triumph?